Ambient music is more popular than ever. As uncertainty becomes a recurrent theme in our lives through 2020, atmospheric instrumental music has become a go-to for artists and fans caught between scrolling and sourdough. The sound was already enjoying a moment pre-quarantine. Strange, beatless meanderings are the norm on NTS Radio, a station that represents every part of electronic music's diverse tapestry. YouTube has been another big influencer. The site's algorithm recently uncovered a clutch of rare Japanese minimal albums, turning forgotten gems into essential reissues. Often devoid of rhythm or melody, ambient is a style that's more about mood than musical makeup. The ambient genre was coined by the sound's guiding light, Brian Eno, when he released Ambient 1, Music for Airports in 1978. However, its origins can be traced back to the French composer Eric Satie, who pioneered the concept of background or furniture music in the early 20th century. It should come as no surprise that life's current pressures could affect our listening habits. There's a spatial element to ambient music that lends time for reflection, something that normally eludes us, but we now have in abundance. When you get lost in an ambient album, the hours drift by comfortably, more discreetly. The genre has always served a therapeutic purpose. Eno designed music for airports to ease pre-flight nerves in waiting lounges. As he put it, the music was meant to induce calm and a space to think. Listening to background noise rather than lyric-based tracks is also said to boost concentration and creativity. Some studies have even looked at ambient's effectiveness in treating dementia, anxiety, and pain in cancer patients. Such conditions might not directly affect the average millennial, but in a world where Instagram followers dictate status, the meditation app Calm has seen 50 million downloads, and wellness centers are considered a festival staple. It's easy to see why some are seeking music that helps them look inwards. Lockdown life, empty dance floors, and the NTS factor all compound the same trajectory. If you wanted to, ambient wraps you in a cocoon, away from the stresses of the outside world. We should take comfort that there's so much of it out there until we're ready to emerge again, even if it means listening alone, from our bedrooms, or in nature.